But first, for anyone who's listening, can you just fire away? Who are you and what do you specialize in? But first, for anyone who's listening, can you just fire away? Who are you and what do you specialize in?
My name's Nathan Wallace, and I specialize in neuroscience, brain development. So I used to be a human development lecturer at Canterbury University. So human development looks at all different aspects of, how humans develop, nature, genetics, but just look at where humans come from, that nature nurture stuff. That was sort of my background. Well, I started out as a primary school teacher. So I was being a teacher and worked in social service, and really child counsellor was what I did for most of years. So I worked around trauma. But now what I do is train parents all about the brain. That tends to be what I'm known for.
Well, that's where I first heard about you, actually, because I'm also, at the moment, I'm a part-time teacher aide. So between stand-up comedy and doing this, I also do teacher aiding. And that's where I was first put on you.
Stand-up comedy and teacher aiding go perfectly together, just gotta say.
Tell me about it. It's just like, It's just insane. So the kids see me for what I really am, just a big joke. It's just so brutal.
Yeah. It's authentic.
It's real. Let's go for it. So, hey, I was looking at some of your videos and you were talking a lot about, that first 1,000 days. And I want to break that into like two sections. And the first is you say first 1,000 days, but you also clarify that it's from conception.
Yep.
So that includes time in the womb, correct?
All the pregnancy. Yep.
Got you. And so what in those first 1,000 days, what kind of development is actually taking place? But I also want to break it down. First, what kind of development, besides the obvious, physical aspects, what mental and cognitive development's taking place while the child's in the womb?
Right. Well, your brain, universally, brains grow from the bottom to the top. So they've also evolved from the bottom to the top. They work on a second-by-second basis, bottom to top. So when we look at the literature around fetal alcohol, the effects of fetal alcohol syndrome, you see that the different stages of pregnancy that the fetus is exposed to the alcohol causes different problems because the brains grow from the bottom to the top. So if the alcohol crossing the placenta has caused problem with baby's brain development in the last trimester, it'll be brain number 4 that was forming then, the frontal cortex. So it'll be problems with mood regulation, that sort of stuff, higher intelligence, controlling emotions. Whereas if it's, say, early in the pregnancy, they used to call it fetal alcohol syndrome because it was associated with certain facial features where your eyes are slightly further apart. You often miss the lines going from the nose to the top of the lips. There's certain facial features we associate with fetal alcohol syndrome. They called it in the old days. And that's associated really with day 22 of the pregnancy. Like your face is forming on week 5 of the pregnancy, but the genes being expressed for what your face will look like are being expressed on day 22. Now, most people don't know they're even pregnant on day 22.
Yeah, of course.
So if that's when the genes are being expressed for what your face will look like and you have a glass of wine on day 22 and you don't even know you're pregnant necessarily, that can cause the baby to be born with those facial features. So it's really just that general principle of the earlier in the pregnancy, probably the more damage it's going to do because the lower in the brain it is. And the later in the pregnancy, that's the more brain number 3 and 4, the later brains that are forming. So it'll do damage to those parts of the brain.
And after, and I guess, is there a case to be made for, like, let's say the mother's incredibly stressed out? Does that kind of permeate into the child as well, regardless of the physical stuff?
Yeah, so I was just using alcohol as an example, but absolutely. There's a whole body of literature around the impact of domestic violence because basically you can sort of, minimize it down to human beings release 2 types of hormones, if you like. There's the negative hormone associated with stress, cortisol. I'm going to say it's negative, but you need a certain amount of it, but too much of that is certainly associated with all the negative stress responses. And then all the positive endorphins like serotonin and dopamine and stuff, if we just call all of them endorphins, then, sorry, I think I've lost sight of what your original question was. I got too into the science.
No. I was talking about like the stress factors and the environment of the mothers. Yeah.
So if mum's in a domestic violence relationship, use an extreme example, she's releasing cortisol into her system all the time. And not just when she's actually being beaten, when she's at home worrying, oh, it's 6 o'clock, he's supposed to be home an hour ago, oh, has he gone to the pub, am I going to get beaten? That's all releasing cortisol. Dad might get home and he just had a flat tire and go straight to bed, and there was no domestic violence, but mum was still releasing cortisol the whole night worrying about it, and that cortisol is being washed over the baby, and that's the way the baby interacts with the environment in the womb. And so all that cortisol was telling the baby that, oh, that's a dangerous environment out there, there's a war going on, because she's releasing all the stress hormone. I better get a brain that's ready to be in war, rather than a brain that's ready to have empathy and higher intelligence and all the stuff that you get if mum, instead of being in a domestic violence relationship, has got a partner that's, giving her a foot rub, making her cups of tea. She's madly, deeply in love, feels really secure and in a committed, loving relationship. She's releasing endorphins. And that's all those positive hormones. And that's telling the baby, things are pretty bliss out there. I can, start to get ready for empathy and higher intelligence. I don't need to focus on survival so much.
And it's interesting because one thing that I really took from what you were talking about is how the brain really does mold, and it's built according to the environment that it's placed in.
Yes, that's actually the sentence that the literature uses. The human brain is designed to be molded by the environment it encounters.
And thank you for watching that clip. If you enjoyed it, make sure you hit that subscribe button on the left. And if you want to watch the full episode, hit the square on the bottom. To watch another small clip, go ahead and hit that square on top. And if you just want to listen to the full episode but don't have time to watch it, you can find this podcast wherever podcasts are listened to. Thanks. Bye.